If you're in business, you think about money, you talk about money, you like to think what you'd like to do when you had more money, but we don't necessarily connect very well in our businesses. And that's the theme of tonight's I Hate Numbers show. Been off the air for a couple of weeks in terms of broadcasting with lots of things to catch up on. And that's what we're going to go through tonight. Now, in addition, what I'd like to share with you tonight is the result of a survey that I've carried out with about nearly 600 respondents, which is pretty impressive, much more so than shampoo commercials, about people's attitudes to money. And I'm going to share that with you. Got a lot more sort of digging and sort of correlation, etc. to do, but I think they make for very, very good first time reading. So that's what's going to talk us through. If you're just coming up on to the show tonight, obviously, if you're on live, fantastic. Let me know you're there. Put hashtag replay if you're just joining up here. Any comments, any thoughts? Love to hear them. Until then. I love that music, which always sets the tone here. So again, if you're just coming up onto the show, fantastic. Thank you for your company tonight. I know it's a beautiful summer's day. Is it summer yet? It's still, June. Let's call it summer. Beautiful sunshine. So let's make the most of that. So it's more likely you're going to be catching us up on replay. Any comments, any thoughts you've got, by all means do share them with me. In terms of just a quick intro for those of you who don't know me, my name is Mahmood, as it says on the screen. I'm an accountant of over 26 plus years working, running their own businesses, helping people to improve what's in there, money mindset, make profits, which is always a good thing to do, save tax, save time, and have the business lifestyle they aspire to. So that's got to be pretty good going there. So tonight's show is about money mindset. And I'm absolutely fascinated by people's attitudes to money. It can be a real boon to them in their business, and this crosses the spectrum, folks, by the way. So whether it is your own self-employed business, whether you're working for somebody else, whether you're running a social enterprise, your charity, your attitude to money, your money mindset has a real big impact, not just in prosperity, not just in financial prosperity, but also I believe in well-being, in terms of your general attitude to how you relate to that business, how you conduct conversations with your clients, with your suppliers, with your staff. Whether we like it or not, money is at the foundation rock there. And for all businesses, whatever shape or size or complexity, I'm very much of the belief that money has got to be factored into there. It's got to be one of your primary goals. And even though it might seem a bit of a contradiction here, money is not what you're pursuing in itself. Money comes as a consequence, but you've got to have money outcomes as a financial goal and as one of your key goals. And quite logically, you might be asking yourself, well, why? I've gone into business for a number of reasons. It may be because I want to make a difference on somebody's life. It may be I want to be more in control of my own destiny. Certainly that was one of my influencing factors when I started in my back bedroom about 26 plus years ago, thinking I wanted more control over my life. I wanted to be the person who was accountable for those decisions. I wanted that flexibility, that freedom. Yes, I wanted to make money as well. Certainly, I didn't experience that making lots of money in the early stages of my business career. Like all business owners, in those early phases, you make mistakes, you mess up. You still do that every now and again. So it never vanishes there. But actually being that decision maker, being that person who's accountable for everything, for me, certainly gave me a great buzz, a great sense of reason for doing it. Even though there's a lot of turbulence on helter-skelter going on in your business, that was certainly there. But for me, making money meant that I could continue delivering my why. So all my whys, which will resonate with a lot of you out there in terms of making a difference, having an impact on people's lives, that flexibility, perhaps not having somebody to answer to except yourself, that financial responsibility, that financial outcomes are all there, but you cannot continue with your why unless you're making money. And by making money, I'm talking about making profit. But still, I see it. I see it in big companies. I see it in small companies. I see it in solopreneurs, sole traders. I see it in social enterprises. That money relationship tends to be quite, how can I put it politely, quite interesting there. And I think that has a massive impact on people's well-being. And we all know that if your well-being isn't calibrated correctly, if your sense of value, sense of worth is not recognized by others, if you're not actually making enough financial return to continue generating a business, having good money for your family and for yourself and paying yourself, that can have a negative impact. And if you don't look after that primary asset in your business yourself, that is really going to be very detrimental. So, it's not something you can escape from, not something everybody does well. I'm certainly recognizing myself in the early stages, and now and again, that money manifestation, spills over. Now, you might be thinking, okay, Mahmood, but before we look at the influences, in what way do you think this money attitude goes over? Well, it goes from the very simple when you come to price your products and services, when you come to put a figure on there. People, generally speaking, tend to undervalue themselves. So when they're actually looking at how much should they charge, not knowing where they should pitch themselves, not knowing how much they should charge that customer, maybe not being comfortable with their own skin and their own confidence about what to charge for something, that comes across, and that is influenced by money attitude. Now, in terms of that pricing formula, by the way, that magic number, all I would say at this stage, this is not really a session on pricing per se, but when we come up with a figure that we're going to charge our client, charge our audiences, charge our customer, is typically based on numbers, in terms of like costs, target profit margins. It's based on the psychology, in terms of what how we sort of interact with our end client and end user. And it also comes by in terms of our own perception of value and where we position ourselves. So it's a very complex myriad of ingredients that go in there, but certainly your money mindset, your money attitude, whether go from one extreme of the imposter syndrome to having a very inflated opinion of your ability and self, and not comparing yourself to what other people do, thinking you're extremely unique, has a manifestation. Other areas that spring to mind, if I think about doing work for a client where you may give them credit terms, we can talk about getting money in on time is really important for liquidity. Well, that's really important. We know that when we invoice customers, that the quicker we can collect that money in, the better it is for our liquidity, the better it is for our cash flow. The better our cash flow is, then the more sustainable growth our business is. But having said that, there's a money disconnection going on here about why we might be late issuing invoices, about collecting money that's overdue, about having those conversations with clients who may be late. We may transfer our own feelings about how we see that onto that client, and there might be quite innocent explanations. Clients might be quite naughty, but not having that conversation, not knowing what that mechanism, thinking to ourselves, okay, we'll just wait a few more days. We won't actually be bullish or assertive. There are techniques we can do to improve credit control, certainly, but I think fundamentally your money attitude, overspills and impacts on that. We take it with us. In terms of if we don't actually know what the future may hold for us, if we don't have that idea of planning ahead, if we don't have that idea of doing a humble cash flow forecast, if we don't actually dip our toe in the water and think what is the future likely to look at, what's our business story, what does that equate to in terms of cash? Well, not knowing, can we do X? Can we afford to take somebody on? Can we afford to take time off? Can we afford to do this? Those questions that can't be answered is a money mindset attitude, because the solution, simplistically, is about looking ahead, looking into the future, doing a cash plan. And that, to me, is very cathartic. It's very liberating. It really settles people's anxiety when you've got some insight. There could be a numeracy issue. People equate, having a comfortable relationship with numbers being mathematically in tune. Well, that isn't necessarily the case. There are resources, and I'll just give you a little tip. If you visit my website, if you check out the resources section, we've got a whole suite of business online calculators, literally, that you can just think whether I want to price a product, price a service, work out my break even, look at the cost of taking on an employee, what does it cost to pay back loans, is it worthwhile me being self-employed or a company? Those immediate questions can be answered by tools such as the online calculators I'm referring to. So you don't have to be numerate, you need to be aware what the numbers mean. So there's, perhaps an educational issue there as well. But whatever it is, our money mindset reflects and impacts on our business. And I'm looking particularly in the area of businesses, because obviously that's what my keen interest, that's my day job. That's what I've done for the last 30 plus years in different guises, whether I've worked internationally or nationally or locally. Business for me is a wonderful thing. But to keep a business going sustainable, we know that you've got to do two things. You've got to make profit and you've got to generate good positive cash flow that keeps the ship going. That's, everything else obviously supports that, but profitability and cash is also key. I think the other manifestation of that money mindset is it impacts on relationships, it impacts on due diligence, it impacts on every single thing we do in business, underpinning it, our attitude to money, what it represents, what it is, having those comfortable conversations, getting to grip with it, getting closer to our numbers. Lots of business owners still divorce themselves by choice or by a perception that they're not able to get to grips, and the numbers become a secondary thing. They're left on the back burner. And for me, that's a very dangerous path to tread. It's a very expensive path to tread as well. And those businesses that can have some connection, some correlation, some understanding of what's going on under the bonnet, their numbers here, is a great way to express your business story, and you will find your likelihood of survival, sustainability, and prosperity is much more enhanced. I think it's really, for me, useful to actually try and understand why we have these varying attitudes. And this is where I thought, okay, I've got my own opinion. I've got my own evidence that I've collated over a period of time. I've got my own perception as to why these things happen. But, one man's perception, one person's experience isn't the answer to why. And I think if you understand why, then you can actually understand what you can do to improve that. And it's all about, for me, improving and having a better relationship about money, what it represents, what it can do for you in your business, having a better, more comfortable relationship with numbers. And if you can do that, then, you're halfway there to having the business that you want. Now, so what I did, I carried out a survey. I was very fortunate. Lots of people responded. I've got a significant number of respondents. Nearly 600 people responded here. I've still got to do some work in terms of doing some correlation, causation, but I'm going to share with you some instinctive first level responses that came from that, because for me, it's really insightful. I'll share the results with that in a moment. If you're interested, by the way, if you didn't take part in the survey closed a couple of days ago. I'm going to be announcing the winner. So just to give people an extra bit of incentive and to take part in the survey, there's a prize that was awarded to the respondent. I'm going to be sharing the results of that survey. If you think you'd like to see what that survey said, if you'd like to actually see how it might apply to you, then drop me a line in the comments box. I'll be publishing the results of the full survey in the next week or two in terms of doing a bit more in-depth work. So if that's something you think that would of interest, then I'd love to hear from you, and I'll add you to the mailing list. So what does this survey say? All right, let me just share my screen. Now, the survey that I carried out, so we had nearly 600 respondents here, by the way, and I'm going to drill down into what lies behind that approximately 600 people that responded. If it makes you feel any better, gives you more confidence, when you look at the TV adverts, when they look at, whether it's cosmetics or whether it's shampoos, you've probably got a very small sample set of about 170 if you're lucky. Sometimes I've seen it below there. So again, it's a good snapshot. It's a good temperature feel there as well. And the title was, I'd love to hear what you think about money, some survey snapshots. So let's crack on, folks. Let's see what the survey was saying. Now, just to give you some background, when I looked at the age profile, what I did, I correlated the age profile, and there were three main cohorts of respondents, by the way. Those working for themselves, their own boss, those who were in employment, and those who were students. Now, if you look at the demographics in terms of age profile, it's quite interesting that in terms of those people who answered in the working for your own self, the bosses, very few of them are under 25. The cohort group there is between the ages of 25 and 44. And obviously the third largest cluster is the 45 to 54. For those employed, the larger proportion of people by age, so is age a consideration, were more in the 25 to 34 age group. The second age group there is the 35 to 44. And then obviously you've got either side, those under 25 and those over the age of 45. And then lastly, students, obviously valuable input. Typically, the majority of the students that responded, they were in that lower age cluster. Now, the reason I asked the age, by the way, because again, we've got to think to ourselves, when we look at surveys, and I'm going back to a former life, by the way, I love being an accountant. I also used to be a teacher, a lecturer, an educator. So I've taught everything from primary school, believe it or not. So I've taught little kids and I've taught postgraduate, I've taught professional, I've taught vocational. I love the world of teaching and training, which is what I still do now. Less so much teaching and education in terms of formal institutions like higher education, FE. My first career was in teaching, but I taught something called research methods for people doing MBAs, postgraduates, and statistics are great. You know, they give us a good snapshot here, but what I'm trying to look for is patterns, that is there's any correlation between age. I also asked people in terms of religious persuasion, where they fitted. I also went at gender. So in terms of, as we'll see as the survey gets drilled down even more detail to look at the correlation. But we have here, this is the age profile of the respondents. If we look at the gender is pretty much more towards the male cohort. Interesting to see that in the employed sector of respondents, the majority were male. When it comes to working for yourself, your own boss, you know, the majority were male. Again, one can be really critical of the numbers here, but I just want to give us a flavour, and there's some further work to be done. And we looked at the student cohort here, probably a bit more parity between male and female. We've got some non-binary, transgender in there as well. So just to make sure we went across all gender groups. Now, here's the questions that I asked. And there are approximately 6 questions, which I got some initial response. Remember, we've got a sample group of about 550 to 600 who responded. So the question was, for me, money is a means to achieve objective. And for me, like a typical what's called like a Likert scale, taking the strength of reaction to that question there. And as we can see there, neither agree or disagree, as one would expect the middle answer in terms of students. In terms of when we looked at people who work for themselves, agree is that came out stronger and strongly agree. You know, money is a means to an end. It's there to achieve something, which for me is a really good positive way of looking at it. If you're in the employed section, well, you know, effectively the answers are a little bit more skewed. Now, considering on that same sort of idea of the Likert thing, I asked the question about money as a means to obtain prestige, social recognition. Now, again, the majority of respondents in all clusters, in terms of working for yourself, employed and student, all were of the agreement to strong agreement. Now, where those influences come from, by the way, which is I drilled down as well, we're going to see whether they're influenced by family, by friends, personal circumstances, not as a violin story. I'm very proud of my own sort of roots. I'm one of 9 kids, not a great deal of money to begin with. My attitudes to money were certainly shaped by that. Doesn't mean you become a product of that past, but it certainly you can't dismiss it completely there as well. So again, more work to be done. So money, what does that represent? Is it the freedom to do what you want? Again, what we've seen here is that there's a stronger tendency towards the agreement and strongly disagree. Strongly agreement, even I can pronounce it correctly. So from working for yourself, employed and student cohort as well. So all these things that are manifesting themselves in terms of how people view money is those attitudes, when you take them into your business, when you take them into what you're doing, your social enterprise, your private business, your charity, your solopreneur, your self-employed work here, those influences there, you know, they what they represent has an impact on how they're expressed. Money to obtain power. Strong parity. Students, again, if we remember from the first part, the students tend to be of the smaller age demographic, the under 35s. Those who are employed were agreeing. Those who were working for themselves, again, we've got a greater tendency towards the agreeing and strongly agreeing here. So money being, I think, a combination of a very positive representation and in terms of that sort of that power and prestige thing. Money is a means to make friends. I think we see a drop down in the respondents there. Students slightly differently. Again, nothing wrong with students there. So any students out there listening, thank you very much for your company. So there we can see the answers are certainly a bit more nuanced and a bit more spread. Now, this was, again, for me, just an interest in taking the temperature. Money is something I'm prepared to obtain by any means that I can. Obviously, I didn't add anything to that. Anyone who's out there, by the way, please, make sure you maintain a balance of integrity to this, which I'm sure certainly amongst my cohort certainly will be, that might manifest itself in how it represents itself. And what we can see there is there's a stronger tendency towards the agree and strongly agree. So again, that may reflect itself in how you price yourself, how you deal with people. It may be the impact that you get from, how suppliers. So all these various things, what money represents, it's not a straightforward thing. Well, folks, that was the, let me just stop sharing the screen now. Just vanished there temporarily. So that was the result of the survey. Very useful. So again, I will be publishing that. I'm going to do some drill down work there as well. And this is not survey for a survey's sake, by the way, but I think if we understand why something is, then it helps us to actually build on that and to improve it accordingly. Now, if I was to give 2 tips, by the way, on the strapline, as do I think money is important? Absolutely. Do I think money is the only thing that we go into business for? Absolutely not. It's not the why. It's part of the why. If you pursue money for itself, you tend to probably become a cropper. You've got to do whatever you offer, whatever your service is, whatever your product is, whatever you offer to make that transformation, make sure it's done well. Make sure you can hit that target with your clients, your customers, do all those wonderful things well, but make sure you make profits from it. Now, I don't use the word making sales, by the way, because sales, I think, are largely an irrelevance. It's the profit you make from that transaction that's more critical than the value of the sale itself. Now, for me, to try and up your game in your money mindset, I think there's 2 numbers really to focus on. Focus on 2 numbers, don't overwhelm yourself, but cash flow, making sure you've got adequate cash to keep you going for the now and for the future. And ultimately, a cash flow forecast, folks, is what does it for me. Every single business I would strongly suggest, which basically says do it, whether you are just starting up in your business cycle, whether you're already established, you must do, I use that word must, with due consideration, you must do a cash flow. Cash flows are so liberating. Cathartic, improve the well-being, improve your decision making, all those things there as well. They really, really are a powerful mechanism. The other thing I would focus on is profitability, making sure that you know what your profit is, that you're making in your transactions. If you're not quite sure what that profit margins are, there are tools that you can do. And I'm just going to share something here with folks, you good folks. So if you're coming up onto the show, just coming up, there is a resource there. Please check that out. So that's a whole suite of business calculators, which goes everything. Shall I share the screen so you can all see? Let's do that, shall we, folks? Bang, there we go. This is done live, so hence it's not as smooth as it should be. So again, you've got all these calculators there to tap into. There's also a podcast called I Hate Numbers, because I know lots of people do. I love them, by the way, because I think they're absolutely brilliant. You need to use them in your business. They're your best friend. Do not divorce yourself from them. So check out the podcast, I Hate Numbers. It's a weekly podcast covering a whole wide variety of topics, jargon free. Certainly that's the aspiration. Jargon free, short 10-15 minutes, bang, packed full of useful information. Subscribe, listen to it, give me some feedback and tell me if you want anything covered. New section, video blogs here. For me, it's really important to share lots of good information. Okay, folks, that's enough from me for this week. So it's been good being back. Let me know what if you pick up on the show, you think don't agree with me, you want to add some comments, make a comment in the comments box accordingly. I'll pick it up. I'd love to know what your attitude to money is. Do you think you've got a good one, a bad one, and a different one? The survey, as I said, it's closed now. But if you've seen them, it'd be interesting to see what your after questions are and any tips you've got of helping people with their money mindset. Share them accordingly. But for me, folks, 2 takeaways. Don't divorce yourself from your numbers. Make sure you improve your money mindset because it's good for you, your well-being, your family, having a sustainable business. Get closer to your numbers and focus on cash and profitability. So that's bang full of lots of tips. Until next week, folks, enjoy the sunshine. Don't get sunburned. Put on your factor 50 or whatever it is. And until next week, I'll bid you a good week. I'll see you